Jam Butty Boy is the reluctant fell runner. Episode 10. The Night Run.
"We'll go at night,"
said Camo.
"That way our families will just be asleep. We'll get in about 2, half 2, and get up with them, and then there can be no complaining."
Won't it be a bit dangerous in the lakes at night? Said JB.
"We'll pick our routes. It'll be fine with head torches, and with summer coming, we'll get some light anyway,"
he said. Well, we'll give it a try and see then, said JB.
"OK, Friday night. I'll pick you up at 9. We'll get up there for 10:15, 4 hours out, so 11:45, 12, 1, 2. Back at the car, 1:45, in bed 2:30.
OK, we'll give it a go, said JB. Friday night came and they parked up in the middle of nowhere. When they turned into park, they caught sight of a big barn owl in the road that had just caught a mouse. It flew off with it into the night, in the dark. They got out of the car and locked up. When they set off walking, they went under a last single street light before heading up into the darkness. Underneath the street light there was a large dead hare. JB stopped in his tracks.
"Look at that. It looks like it's been laid out," he said. "What's that doing there, laid out like that? It looks like it's been laid out as an offering or something." "Probably just been run over by a car," said Camo. "And they put it there. It'll just be the dark messing with your mind. If you saw it in the day, you'd think nothing of it."
They left the hare behind to go past the gamekeeper's cottage. A single dog started to howl.
"Woo!" "Oh my God," said JB. "It's the bloody hound of the Baskervilles after us now." "Ha ha!"
Camo laughed. Then the whole pack started up, and the noise echoed and bounced off the hills and around the inside of their heads.
"That's actually quite creepy, that,"
said Camo. They started up the mountain, leaving the howling dogs behind. Their 2 head torches bobbed and weaved and became smaller and smaller. On the way up, they saw a campfire and then a familiar little tent. It was the naked camper. As they were approaching, he came out and did his usual little inappropriate stretch.
"Watch your Camo, Jam Butty. You're not going up at night as well now,"
he said. Thought we'd give it a go, said JB.
"Ooh, you want to be careful up there in the witching hour,"
said the naked camper.
"Does strange things to your mind, the dark. Shadows everywhere, strange lights, your mind always expecting something to jump out at you."
JB and Camo looked at each other.
"We'll be all right,"
said Camo.
"I'm used to all that from my army days."
"Not Cumbrian hills," said the naked camper. "Even the Romans kept clear of these, left the pagans to it."
"We'll be okay,"
said Camo. The naked camper started sniffing the air. He ran his hands over his arms and shivered.
"Ooh. And it's about to pour down in an hour. Absolutely cats and dogs it will." "Phuh!"
Camo scoffed and tapped his new Jaguar Mark III watch.
"Oh, you're wrong there,"
he said.
"Not according to the wonders of modern technology, and the Jaguar it's not. Clear as a bell tonight."
Camo looked at JB and smiled.
"Well, you keep your fancy watch," said the naked camper. "I'll stick to my nose. Cats and dogs, I tell you." "OK," said Camo, setting off walking. "See you again."
"I'd turn back if I were you," he shouted after them. before it's too late.
Righto!
Shouted Camo, waving over his shoulder, not turning back and carrying on. JB trotted a little faster to catch him up.
I hardly notice he's naked now, he said.
Yeah, said Camo.
You get used to it. He's wrong about that rain, though.
They ran on over the hills.
You have to concentrate on where you're putting your feet, even more than normal, said JB. You don't see anything other than what's at your feet. We could be anywhere. I know, said Camo. It's boring, heart-sapping plod, this. You see nothing. You can't even get up any speed. You have to take it slower than in daylight.
While they were running with their heads down, behind them there was a fire with pagans dancing around it. Near where they ran, they unknowingly passed 2 male pagans, painted up, sat there with their spears. The 2 pagans watched them go past, and then one threw a spear that just missed them.
Why did you do that?
Said the first pagan.
I could have sworn that was my old maths teacher,
said the second pagan.
Ah,
said pagan 1. You missed him. You should have paid more attention in trigonometry. Yeah, agreed the second pagan. JB and Camo ran on.
Did you hear something?
Said JB.
No, what the naked camper said will be playing with your mind.
An hour after the start of the run, the heavens opened and the rain came down in buckets. They were drenched and the ground turned into a bog. The run was over a less craggy and rocky section of the Norbert, more like the Cowgirls, more friendlier green-rounded hills, bigger of course. It was supposed to be a little safer. Once they were up and on the tops, it was rolling along up and down until the final drop-off at the end. The downside to that was that it was exposed. Just as the naked camper said, the wind and rain came in. JB had been in nothing like it. Camo was in front, plodding along, occasionally looking back to check he was still there. He had not mentioned the rain since it started. JB thought it was because of his watch not predicting it. The rain was coming from the right side and slightly to the front as they ran. The wind was so strong, the rain was a constant stream thrown at them, almost sideways. The water seemed to cling to JB, and it was more like carrying a lead blanket over his right side, a cold lead blanket. A particularly strong gust came just as he took a step with his right leg, and it threw his right foot over his left as he ran. He tried to pull it away, but the wind was too strong, and he braced to faceplant. Just in time the wind eased a fraction, and he dragged his right foot out. After that he tried to run a fraction more bow-legged to help prevent it a second time. With the path they were taking turned a fraction right, and then the wind came more into JB's face and head. JB had to turn his head a little slightly at an angle to stop the wind and rain blowing directly into his face. This put his head torch out of line, so he moved it slightly off centre on his head so it continued to picture in front of him. The rain and wind was now battering at his right ear. He felt it going cold, and the beginning of earache. He reached under his hood and pulled his hat down over his right ear. He also double folded over his buff, which was now soaking wet, and pulled that over his right ear also. He now had 4 layers protecting his right ear. The double layer of the buff, his hat, and the hood. Getting back to running, it was not long before his right ear started to feel hot. He smiled to himself. It was the only hot part of his body. He glanced forward at the back of the giant frame of Camo trudging along, getting battered in the wind and rain. The light from his head torch was near useless, rebounding back off the pouring rain and giving off a general glare rather than piercing through the darkness and helping light their way. I hope to God he knows where we are going, thought JB. JB put his head down a little more. It was amazing how much difference a fractional turn of their head could make. As they ran, he tried to make an assessment of their present position. Assuming Camo knows where he is going, and we don't disappear off an edge, how long have I got compared to how long we've got to go? The water and the cold was getting through his rain top at the edges. He could feel his extremities. His face, feet, and hands were getting cold. The cold was starting to creep up his arms and his legs. His core was still warm. He was in a trudging mode in his energy use. He was okay at the moment, but getting colder and having less energy. He tried to estimate how much time they had left and how quickly he was losing heat and energy. He knew they were in a precarious position. One error or accident and they were in serious trouble. He kept himself calm. Camo stopped running in front and waited for him to catch up. He put his face nearer JB so he could be heard.
"Bastard watch!"
said Camo, shaking his watch and then tapping on the wet screen, struggling to read the dial in the rain.
"It's like being in a washing machine up here. This is incredible," said JB. "What are we going to do, Camo?" "Well, that's it. We're going to have to come off the fells. You can't stay up here in this. You'll get hypothermia, and you'll die. We'll head for Giggle Squeak and hope there is a last bus back to our car. If not, we'll have a long wet road run back." "OK," shouted JB over the rain. "We can't come off yet though," said Camo. "That's a 3,000-foot drop to your left. Don't go that way, or you'll die."
"OK, I won't," shouted JB over the rain. Eventually they made it off the hill. JB was relieved. There was an old village pub, the Hangman's Arms, with a light on inside.
"We'll ask in here about the late bus," said Camo.
"What will we do if there's no night bus?" said JB.
"We'll have to get a taxi,"
said Camo.
"It will be expensive because we have come off the other side of the mountain. They won't be happy driving out here in this."
"These local pubs can be a bit funny about strangers, can't they?" said JB.
"Don't be daft,"
said Camo.
"We'll buy a drink and they'll be fine. Money's money. Coin of the realm."
Camo opened the door of the pub. They were stood there, framed in the open doorway, with the lightning flashing behind. All the pub turned to see them. There was a man behind the bar. Over in an alcove on the right was a group of women basket weaving, some knitting, staring at them. Over the left there was a log fire with 3 old men smoking pipes with no smoke in them, staring at them. JB and Camo looked down at the dripping pool of water by their feet on the wooden floor.
"Sorry about that," said JB. "It's raining."
"Shut the door, will you?" said a voice.
"OK,"
said Camo. The patrons of the pub all started talking quietly. Camo walked over to the bar and JB followed.
"Excuse me, mate,"
said Camo.
"When is the night bus due to Thrill Cold?"
"No night bus," said the barman deadpan. "Cancelled 6 months ago. Next one, 8 tomorrow morning."
"Oh,"
said Camo.
You don't know the number of a taxi, do you?
I suppose I could look, he said.
Thanks,
said Camo.
Can we have 2 oranges while we wait?
Bottle or cordial, said the barman in his deadpan voice.
Cordial,
said Camo. A woman walked through from behind the bar. You could tell immediately she was the landlady and she was in charge. What have we got here then? She said in a loud voice. My husband says we've got 2 bloody great big men dripping water all over my nice parquet floor.
Yeah,
said Camo.
Sorry, that's us. If you've got a mop, we'd happily clean it up for you.
Oh, don't you worry about that, she said at the top of her voice. Let me come around the bar and have a good look at you. She was a big-bottomed lady. It was the kind of bottom that you could cut a loaf of bread on, and she had to manoeuvre left and right to get it through the narrow route, but she did it with surprising speed and agility. She stood in front of them, with her hands on her substantial hips. You are dripping wet. What have you been up to? She said.
We're fell runners,
said Camo.
We go running on the fells. But we got caught out by the rain.
Fell running, eh? She said. I bet that's tough going. You must be as fit as butcher's dogs. Right, well, we can't have you dying of hypothermia now, can we? She turned to the pipe smokers. Come on, you lot. Get away from that fire and let these young lads in, she said, walking towards them. Shoo, shoo! Come on, shift yourselves for once. The 3 old men struggled to their feet.
Oh, it's okay,
said Camo.
They don't have to move on our account.
No, it's fine, said JB. Oh, they're all right, this lot. What with their 2 pints of mild all night, nursing the last drop until kicking out time because they've got no home to go to. And have you seen them with their pipes, the silly old sods? We told them they can't smoke any more, so they bring them in just to make a point. It's not right, laughed one of the old men, and all 3 waved their pipes in the air. Come on, Tommy, said the landlady. Isn't it time you got about dying? You've had your turn. Hurry up and make room for someone else. Shuffle along to your mortal coil and make room for some of these young ones. Ha ha, never, laughed Tommy, showing a missing tooth. I've told you I'm not going until I've outlived you. Yes, you will and all, you miserable old sod, she said. Aye, and when I go I'll be cremated, he said. And I'm so stuck on staying, they'll have to burn me for a week to make sure I'm gone. So you keep saying, she said. I've told you before, when I go, I'm still coming back here. You should be pleased. A haunted pub will make you famous and make you rich. Sorry to put you out, said JB, quietly passing one of the slow old men. They looked like not getting the heat from the fire might be the final straw that saw them off.
Sorry, mate,
said Camo. The landlady turned around and, without taking a breath, shouted at her husband, who had been behind the bar before. Figgis! Figgis! Where are you, Figgis? Yes, my darling wife, he said, only slightly less droll than before. Bring that clothes maiden out of the kitchen for these boys, to dry the clothes on, she shouted. Yes, dear, he said, and half turned.
Oh, and put the kettle on, and make 2 big pint pots of tea, she said. Fancy serving them cold orange juice in their state. And put some sugar in it too.
Yes, dear. He'd half turned and then turned back. Did you ask them if they take sugar, dear?
I'm not asking in their state, she shouted. It's not for their pleasure. It's medicinal.
Right, dear, he said.
Oh, Figgis, she said.
Yes, dear, he said.
Get the clothes maiden first.
Yes, dear.
The landlady looked across at the basket weaving and knitting women. Men! Huff!
They all nodded without stopping.
When he took your money at the bar, she said, did he do his 2 groats, please, joke?
Said Camo, not wanting to drop Figgis in it, but too scared to lie.
I can't remember. I bet he did, the silly sod, she said.
Figgis came out with the clothes maiden and opened it up close to the fire.
Not there, she said. You'll block out the heat to them. Come on, Figgis.
Where then, dear? He said, holding it and looking nonplussed.
Give it here and go and get those teas made.
Yes, dear, he said, and then he stopped. Would you like one, dear?
What? She said. And be up to the bathroom 10 times at night? You know I don't drink tea or coffee after 8, Figgis.
Yes, dear, he said, ambling off. The landlady arranged the clothes maiden slightly off to one side. They took their dripping tops off and put them on the clothes maiden. They started to let off steam immediately.
Should be good as new in no time, she said.
Then she turned back to the basket weavers and the knitters.
Here you are, ladies. Enjoy the free show tonight, she said. A much better exhibition than that scrawny fellow they got for Megan Braithwaite's hen do. Thanks, said Camo. We really appreciate this.
Yeah, agreed JB. Thanks. It's a lifesaver.
It's no trouble at all, she said. So, what are your plans then? How are you getting home? We've parked up at Thrillcold, said Camo. We plan to do leg 2 of the Norbert round, a series of fells. So, that's Clothier's Fell, Noddy Fell, Doddy, Ploddy, Prayer, Pale Shadow, Loverman, Anne Boleyn, Nether Regions, Carbint, Green Shield Stamps, and lastly Bumshoe, before running back down the A road to Thrillcold. Oh, she said. All them hills, and in the dark too. So, how are you getting back to your car then? You're not planning on running in this, surely?
We asked your husband to book a taxi, said JB. The landlady's eyes clouded over and she put her hands on her substantial hips.
Figgis! Figgis!
She shouted, louder than before. He was just coming through with 2 pint pots of steaming tea. Yes, dear, he said, putting the mugs down.
Cancel that taxi and get our Robbie up. What are you thinking, man? She said. He can run these boys to Thrillcold, can't he?
I suppose he could, dear, he said.
No supposing about it, Figgis, she said.
OK, dear, he said, toddling off.
You don't need to do that, said Camo. We don't want to put him out.
No, said JB.
A taxi's fine. We don't mind, honestly.
It's no trouble at all, she said. He's not due up until 4. He does the milk. When he comes back, he can have another few hours.
Don't wake him, said Camo. Let him sleep. We'll just get that taxi. Honestly.
No, I won't hear of it, she said. You keep your money in your pocket. He's young. Young uns don't mind on missing a little sleep every now and again. She went to the bottom of the stairs. Robbie! Robbie!
Whoa,
said a distant, muffled, sleepy voice. Come downstairs, Robbie, and give these 2 stranded boys a lift of thrill cold, will you? She said.
OK, Mum,
said the voice, now less sleepy. JB and Camo cringed in their chairs. They heard the floorboards creak as Robbie got out of bed. He's on his way, said the landlady. He'll be down shortly. He's a good boy, my Robbie. She walked off so that they would not try any more to change her mind, and went to speak to the ladies basket weaving and knitting.
I feel really bad now,
said JB.
He's up at 4,
said Camo, looking at his watch.
He probably won't be back to close to 1 after dropping us off.
What have we done? Said JB.
Camo shook his head. Let's get this tea down us quick. The least we can do is get him on the road fast.
Camo moved their clothes a little closer to the fire. In a couple of minutes, Robbie came downstairs in his pyjamas and shoes. His hair was stuck up and his eyes all bleary. He took a giant yawn. And then put his long coat on over his pyjamas. He toddled over them to by the fire. You 2 for thrill cold? He said.
We didn't mean to get you up,
said Camo.
We can still get a taxi,
said JB.
No, it's okay,
he said.
I'll bring the car round to the front so you won't have to get wet. Just give me a couple of minutes to get there.
Camo and JB gulped the steaming tea down as best they could. They gave out multiple thanks to everyone. Everyone nodded. Next time. When they went out of the door, the landlady looked at her husband. Bloody fell runners, she said. Yes, dear, he said. Outside, Camo got into the front passenger seat because of his long legs, and JB got in the back and leaned forward to hear and speak better.
I can't thank you enough,
said Camo.
Your mum is a very kind lady.
She is, said Robbie. She does loads for the community. We've got the pub, of course. We run the post office out of a side room. She does everything, hardly makes any money from it, like. But she doesn't do it for that. Can't have the locals, particularly the old ones with nowhere to go and no post office. What would they do? Watch telly and have no company. She also takes in some of the animals that have been abandoned and no one else will have. JB felt really guilty about what he had thought before.
Here,
said Camo, putting his hand to his pocket. JB went to his.
No money,
said Robbie, suddenly awake, putting a flat hand out at Camo.
I wasn't hinting at that, he said. I can't take money off you. Mum would kill me. Are you sure?
said Camo. Definitely, said Robbie. He dropped them off at their car and shot off back to get some sleep. Camo and JB watched and waved a moment in the pouring rain and then got into Camo's car.
"Oh my God, what nice people," said Camo. "I wonder what that place is like in the day when there's no storm."
"Unbelievable," said JB. "I feel so bad about dragging him out."
"Me too,"
said Camo.
"I think he's half asleep driving back now."
"I hope he gets back okay, and quick, so he can get some sleep," said JB. The windows in the car quickly steamed up when they got in, and Camo put the heaters on full blast.
"Look at this,"
he said, turning to JB. Camo's glasses were steamed up, and you could not see his eyes. JB laughed. Camo took the glasses off and put them on the dashboard at the window in the steaming jet of warm air. "That was the best cup of tea ever," said JB, remembering the battering of the rain and the wind on the mountain.
"Yes, it was. I'm still freezing though,"
said Camo.
"We'll just put the heating on a minute to warm us up and get the windows clear before we set off."
"OK," said JB. JB half awoke to the sound of birds singing. There was a little daylight, and he could not place where he was for a moment, and then he realised where they were. He looked at the clock on the dashboard. 5 a.m.
"Oh my God! Camo! Camo!"
he said, nudging him.
"Ugh!"
said Camo, and woke with a start.
"Incoming! Take cover!"
He grabbed hold of JB, and he was staring at him with sharp, piercing blue eyes.
"Camo, we're still at Thrillcold," he said. "We fell asleep." "Ugh!"
Camo shook his head and looked around, and then looked at his watch.
"It's 5 a.m,
he said.
"Yeah, I know,"
said JB.
"Our families will think we're dead,"
said Camo.
"Shit, there could be search parties out on the hills. Mountain rescue. They might even have the helicopter up and everything. And here we are, sat nice and warm in the car. How embarrassing. We'll never live this down."
"We could check our phones," said JB.
"They would have rung." "Good idea,"
said Camo. They both got their phones out and then looked at each other.
"No reception,"
they said together.
"Oh shit, I'm for it,"
said Camo.
"This was supposed to keep us closer to our families, and now I've been out all night."
"Let's just get back and stop them worrying," said JB. "They'll be the ones suffering. We've been nice and fast asleep."
"Yeah, you're right,"
said Camo. They drove back fast, but it seemed to take forever. They checked their phones on the way. "Nothing," said JB. "You?"
"Nothing,"
said Camo. Eventually, JB was dropped off.
"Call you later,"
said Camo. "Yeah," shouted JB over his shoulder, running in. Camo shot off in his car. Outside JB's home, everything seemed quiet inside. He put the key in the lock quietly and snuck in. He walked through to the bedroom to find his wife sound asleep.
"Thank God for that," he thought. "She must have slept through it."
"I hope Camo's wife didn't all, otherwise he's for it." JB stripped off and let his clothes fall silently to the floor. His wife had her back to him. He tried to get into the bed without disturbing her. Just as he was getting in to lay down, she woke and turned half asleep.
"What time is it?"
she said.
"It's about 6 a.m,
said JB.
"You're not getting up for another run, are you, love? You are doing too much. Did you have a good time with Camo last night?"
"It was okay," sighed JB. Getting back out of bed, JB put his clothes back on and just took off and went out of the door. I suppose I didn't get much running done last night, he thought, while running. And I did get plenty of sleep.